So here's the deal, folks. I have to go out of town for a little bit. I'm already gone by the time you're watching this. So, I'm just doing this in advance. I was going to have this be a video about Arcanum Unbounded, but I forgot to hit record. That's never happened to me in my life. So I took this as a sign that the world was not ready for my thoughts on Arcanum Unbounded, and I will be instead talking about Five Nights at Freddy's, which I planned to save for my, big October recap video, but screw it, there's already a lot to talk about there. Yeah, FNAF. Alright, so Five Nights at Freddy's is something else, man. It's something else. I was in high school when this thing came out, and it absolutely exploded. For those who don't know, which I can't imagine being a lot of people, Five Nights at Freddy's is a series of point-and-click horror games. You attempt to survive overnight as these giant animatronics try to hunt you down and kill you, where death usually results in a very startling jump scare, which of course led it to go viral. The views on these Markiplier videos should give you enough of an idea of just how big this thing was. And it became a massive franchise very quickly, with sequels being churned out faster than you could even comprehend. But what made FNAF different than just other random nonsense jump scare games? I think this playlist might give you an inkling. The lore in these games is absolutely absurd, and the way it was presented originally was very smart, because the story was not spelled out for the player. You really had to go digging to actually learn what was going on, and it took multiple years before people were able to actually piece together the full story. Now, I was personally never really into Five Nights at Freddy's, but I did appreciate just how well it was crafted. I think a lot of the games were kind of lame, but just the overall franchise, Scott Cawthon's a very smart guy. And of course, we are now getting a full Hollywood movie at the end of the month, and it's looking like it's going to make a lot of money. So you can't say this experiment was a failed one. But because there's so much lore, and because it's so popular with kids, it's not really surprising that they started making novels. There are 20 of these things. I understand stuff like Goosebumps and Fear Street, because, it's all different horror stories, but this is just Five Nights at Freddy's. I know there's a lot of content, but I did not expect there to be this much. Anyway, listen, I am kind of excited for the movie, and I've been sort of getting into the lore on the side here, watching some Markiplier videos with my friends, and I kind of wanted to get a bit of a glimpse of what these were all about, especially now that we're in spooky season. So I read the first published book, The Silver Eyes, which came out only a year and a half after the first game and was written by the designer of the game, Scott Cawthon, and Kyra Breed Risley. And I think the idea there was that he wasn't really an author, so he teamed up with a real author. The story follows Charlie, who is a teenage girl that returns to her town of Hurricane, Utah, after 10 years to meet up with all of her old friends as they attend a memorial for their friend who died 10 years ago. Or assumed dead. There's this place in town, it's like a play on Chuck E. Cheese, it's called Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. And this book is a period piece. This event took place in the 80s, where 5 children mysteriously went missing and were never seen or heard from again. This led the restaurant to be closed, locked away, and leave a bunch of traumatized kids, who are now all grown up and back to face their fears. So right away, I have some issues here. You have this cast of characters, and they're all about 17 years old, and they sort of act like, old friends would act. Except for the fact that the last time they saw each other was when they were 7. Imagine that. Imagine having a big group of friends when you were 7, then literally growing up to be college age, and then meeting them again, but they're kind of just acting like they're all still friends. The only memories they have of each other is playing dinosaurs during this memorial for their dead friend, who again died when they were 7. One of the characters goes up to give a speech, and he's like, "Man, I remember all those times we played cops and robbers and superheroes. What a fun little kid, man." What? I understand it being this traumatizing moment, your friend dies when you're very young, but I don't really buy this instant connection all these characters have to each other just because of their age when it all happened. And they don't really feel like teenagers either. They feel more like adults, and I think, this story would make a lot more sense if the characters were a little bit older when this big traumatic event happened. But 7's pushing it, man. Anyway, they go back to the abandoned Freddy's to check it out. Turns out there's an evil serial killer guy in there, and the animatronics are possessed by the dead kids. It's FNAF. It's what you would expect. But unfortunately, it's It's kind of very poorly written. So if you are familiar with the FNAF lore at all, this book is not necessarily canon to that. It does not follow the plot of the games, but it does build off of very similar lore. A lot of the characters have like the same origins. A lot of, you know, the normal stuff happens. Like I literally watched like a 10-minute recap on the entire lore before reading the book, and I could predict most of what was happening. But I just found it to be kind of an incoherent mess. Like the group of kids are always going to Freddy's and then leaving, and then going back to Freddy's, something bad happens and leaving. I kind of wish like everything would just happen all in one night or something. I guess that goes against the 5 nights concept, but I don't know. It felt needlessly slow. Like it spends a lot of time with our main character Charlie, which I think, you know, would normally be a good thing, but she's really boring, and her friends are all really boring, and she starts up this romance with John. But again, it's just so weird. Like, they haven't seen each other since they were 7. They get together, and then they're immediately smitten with each other. And they're like, do you remember the time when we were 6 and you joked about kissing me? I'm like, who even remembers that? What do you guys... The cast is also way too big. There's like 7 of these kids, and the book does not justify it at all. Maybe only like 4 of them end up being important, so I don't really know why the cast had to be this large. The book also involves a trope that is very hard to do right. And when it's not done right, I'm really not a fan of it. And those are selective memories, okay? Charlie has a very traumatic past. If you are familiar at all with the lore of the games, you probably know who Charlie is, so mentally she has blocked a lot of it out. Thankfully though, all of the relevant memories come back to her at the exact right moment that they could be useful. I hate it when they do that. And this happens a lot. Like, we are constantly like jumping around between like the modern day flashbacks, different POVs, and with the way the book is paced, like the whole structure of this thing just feels very sloppy. And it all builds up to an ending that I thought was pretty weak. Also, the animatronics barely do anything in this book. Like, they don't even come to life until near the end. So a lot of the time it's just like, oh, creepy imagery, oh my god, it's Freddy Fazbear, but then like nothing happens. I think the events of this story are fine on their own, but I just think the execution was very mishandled here. I know this is a book written for teenagers, but you know, even compared to other YA horror I've read, stuff by R.L. Stine and Christopher Pike, this one just felt really amateurish. In fact, I think if this book were more the size of like a Fear Street book, I think it could have been a lot more exciting and better paced, which might be a reason why a lot of the newer books are much shorter. So yeah, I gave this a 1 star. Still not my least favorite book of the year. I think Ballad of Songbirds pissed me off more, but this was just yeah, it was just an unpleasant distraction. It wasn't very long, so you know, not a huge waste of time there. But you know, I'm just one guy, and this book is extremely popular. A lot of fans of the series love it, and sure, they are younger, but why not? Let the kids have it. And this book does have kind of an interesting legacy. Not only did it become, you know, a trilogy of books, which I think are unconnected from all of the others, but it also got fully adapted into a graphic novel. And coming out so early in the franchise's life, this one actually added a lot more to the lore of the games that people were trying to decipher at that point. I'm pretty sure, like, a lot of concepts and character names, which had been teased in the games, like, this was like their first official reveal, even though it wasn't canon in the games. This is what a lot of people first looked to. So I think it's cool in that regard, but could have been a bit better. They were actually going to use this book as the basis for the film. Thankfully they aren't, and I gotta say, that movie, I think it might be a banger. Don't quote me on it, but I'm legitimately quite excited to see what they come up with. And with that, thank you all so much for watching. Leave your thoughts on anything Five Nights at Freddy's related down in the comments down below. Who's your favorite animatronic? Mine's got to be the cupcake, okay? I don't think I know any of the lore about the cupcake, but come on, just look at it. Also, let me know if you've read any of these books and what you think of them, and I will see you all soon when I get back for another video. At this point, I might just do Arcanum Unbounded as a short.